today's show, we're going to be talking about Bill C-11, a federal bill that would regulate Canadian content on the internet. And to do that, I'm very pleased to be joined by Irene Berkowitz, a senior policy fellow at Audience Lab. Irene, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, Aaron, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really thrilled to be here. And as you know, I love talking about Bill C-11, so I'm delighted.
Well, that's great, because I hope we can get into it quite a bit over the next half hour. Now, you've written at length about this bill, so a lot of Canadians might not be familiar with this bill. Could you just sort of summarize what it is and what it does?
Of course, that's super important, as most people don't follow this stuff like us policy wonks. So Bill C-11 was tabled on February 2nd, 2022 in the House of Commons. It was pretty much an exact copy, a twin of Bill C-10, which died in June of 2021 on the order paper when the election was called. So Bill C-11, titled the Online Streaming Act, and I suspect will be known as the OSA, had passed through the House of Commons after some spirited but highly political debate on June 21st of this year, and since then has been studied in the Senate by the Transport and Communications Committee through more than 20 meetings, dozens of witnesses, including up and through yesterday, and presumably will be sent back to the House of Commons with suggested amendments and either passed with the amendments or not, but has to be passed in the same form by both houses and then will achieve royal assent. Some had predicted by Christmas or before, but it's not actually looking that way.
Interesting. And so what exactly does this bill do? What are they trying to achieve with this Online Streaming Act?
That is an excellent question. And I noticed you said in your opening that it will enable Canadian content, the CRTC to regulate Canadian content. But actually, it enables the CRTC, and this has been the nexus of a lot of the criticism from very high-level people, that it enables the CRTC to regulate all content on the internet, a rather clunky way of achieving a sort of a little bit of a passive-aggressive goal to include the streamers in the Canadian system, which is why it's called the Online Streaming Act. But some would say that the bill got way over its skis and assigned the CRTC the powers to regulate the entire internet when clearly it's been having some trouble with its 20th century mandate and has a huge job ahead of it just to redefine Canadian content and what all that means in an era of streaming and a global online era. So that's what the bill purports to do, and how it does that, well, we can get more deeply into that. But whether it does that or not.
Well, I was going to say, You, as you point out, I mean, the government has sort of, in their commentary around this bill, suggested it's necessary to protect Canadian content. They want to help Canadian content producers. But as you note, by the nature of the bill is that they would actually be able to regulate all content. Is that, I take it that's one of your concerns with the bill. Are there other specific things that you'd want to talk about off the top that you think this bill gets wrong?
Sure. Let me just say that I have been skeptical, and I've, over the course of 10 years doing a PhD and literally dozens of columns and podcasts and appearances at the CRTC as far back as Let's Talk TV and op-eds, ranging from the Globe and Mail to the Toronto Star and playback to card. I think what I'm most proud of in terms of my skepticism is that I'm welcome in all corners. I think because I tell it like it is with evidence-based, and I develop this skepticism, you might say, through a bottom-up experience in the industry. So let me just unpack the problems as I see them, some top-down. So the first one is that, and many have said that the bill purports to legislate for the global online era, i.e. the internet, as if it's 1985. shove, rather than modernize, it antiquizes the system. And the difference why
Right.
broadcasting and the internet are not the same thing, we can unpack later, but that's the broadest
Right.
possible thing.
Welcome back to Our Canada, Our Future. We're talking about Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Act, with Irene Berkowitz from Audience Lab. Irene, you were saying before the break, we were talking about some of your concerns about the bill, and the first one that you mentioned was that there was a missed opportunity here to sort of step back and look at the Broadcasting Act and what has changed. Can you expand on that? What do you think the government missed an opportunity to do here?
Of course. Yes, I think many were hoping to see, in response to the most significant disruption in human communications in 600 years, more than an amendment to the Broadcasting Act, but maybe as a new Canada Communications Act that would step back, sweep everything off the table and say, okay, what is the global online era done for Canada? Namely, it got rid of the problem of our small market. Where are we now due to our 20th century successful building of an industry? And what are the new problems? Okay, that didn't happen. So we've got is Bill C-11. So how can, the next problem? So most people, the next largest criticism has been the actual scope of the bill. The bill gives CRTC the power to regulate content, not just Canadian content, but content of on any audio visual content is called a program on the entire internet. And most people, the critics of the bill, have found this quite odd, particularly as CRTC has not done that well in keeping up with its 20th century mandate, and has a huge job ahead of it no matter what, because regardless of what happens with C-11, the CRTC needs to revise the definition of Canadian content for the global online era, which is an entire policy framework that's held together with simultaneous substitution and Canadian broadcasters and quotas and many things that actually are falling away in importance. So scope. Moving down more specifically, the bill, even though the Minister Stephen Guilbeault and now Pablo Rodriguez have been caught in a knot of promising to get this out, the bill at the moment includes the ability or the power to regulate USG, or user-generated content, which is the entire 160,000 creator plus new media sector that brings over $1 billion into our GDP without any public money. They're not requesting any, they don't require any, and it is actually not competitive with the legacy sector. It's additive to our creative economy, which is booming. And there's been 40,000 creators, as well as heads of public policy and people like myself who have studied platforms like YouTube. I led a major research project on this, showing that this sector depends for its money. It's a purely demand-driven sector on unfettered access to global audiences. And this was a huge controversy in C-10 because of various things. We can get into those details, but let's keep moving. It's still a problem in C-11, and quite concerning, to the point where Senator Leo Housakos, who's the head of the Transport and Communications Committee, actually tweeted after hearing from all these witnesses on October 30th, just a couple days before we're talking, that the Senate should either fix C-11, fix it, or kill it. So this is quite a concern. Like, you are trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. The inclusion.
Now,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, just to clarify, I mean, when you're talking about USGs, you're talking about things like if people make a TikTok video or a YouTube video. These are things that the CRTC with this bill would have the power to regulate these things, correct?
Correct. And they could exempt them, but the directions to the CRTC have been kept private. And there's actually, as again, going back to what problem are we trying to fix, this is something that is an astounding success. One of the most outspoken creators, a truly charming guy by the name of J.J. McCullough, has been very outspoken and has appeared at the House of Commons and again in the Senate to say that to see this tremendous success as a problem to be solved with legislation is very unnerving to creators, and they have a right to be concerned. I look at it.
It sounds absolutely troubling. Sorry, Irene, I'll stop you there. We'll pick it up after the break. So I wanted to play devil's advocate for you. I mean, we're really talking about Canadian content, protection of what governments define as Canadian culture. It's no secret that in this country we've long had rules around what they call CanCon. They've had them for television, they've had them for radio. So I guess the first question that people might ask is, well, what's wrong with having these kinds of rules for things that appear on the internet as well?
Well, that is a terrific question. And in fact, I was asked about that in the Senate, and I'll give you the same answer because I don't tailor my answers. But many countries, in fact, most countries besides the US, which has never had a media export problem, have national content regimes to encourage and build this very clean, vibrant industry. In fact, that's what we did with our 20th century policy regime. We actually successfully built an industry that is so strong that when Netflix decided to open its studios around the world for local content, the first one it opened was in Canada because of our really tremendous world-class media force. So there's nothing wrong with having CanCon. Right now, the rules and the policy framework is very outdated. What I call in my book, it's a 3-alarm fire, has decimated its relevance. First of all, linear broadcasting is in a sunset phase. Cable delivery is in a sunset phase. And consequently, the advertising that supported linear broadcasting has migrated away. And yet we're years, if not decades out of date to form what I have been advocating for, which is a producer-accessed, platform agnostic, audience-driven sliding scale framework to achieve a purpose. And that you keep asking about purpose, a new goal or purpose, which all public policy should have a goal, would be globality, or popular content that's exported around the world.
Well, that's interesting because when you mention globality, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that most of the previous Canadian content sort of rules and regulatory regime was based around ensuring that Canadians sort of got a sufficient diet of Canadian content, right? Whereas now what you're saying is the view should actually be how to get Canadian content in front of a global audience. So that, in other words, we're still talking about Canadian content, but in terms of who the ultimate consumer of that content is, it's very different in an internet sort of dominated world than in a broadcast and radio dominated one.
Exactly. You really, hit it perfectly. So if you look at it from, big picture, as you suggested just now, the purpose of our 20th century policy regime, which was actually invented by CTV executives when they were at the LA upfronts, and they were like, whoa, we have no audience, so we have no advertising, and everybody's watching, Ed Sullivan on US cable. They actually invented simultaneous substitution to get an audience, and that actually became win-win-win-win, 4 wins: a win for broadcasting, a win for cable, a win for audiences, and a win for the production industry. So protection worked very well to build an industry. Now we have one. It's super strong. So the question becomes, does protection work to build an audience? No, competition works to build an audience. And that's proven by the new golden age of television. As soon as like Netflix and Apple and Disney and online streaming burst on the scene, this has been widely reputed to increase the quality of television when you have higher competition for eyeballs.
Interesting. So what you're saying is that by protecting or trying to protect, you may actually be doing harm now to audiences. Obviously, people may not have as much choice, and by inoculating people for competitors, you don't actually do anything to ensure the quality or competitiveness of the cultural products.
Yes, and there is proof that Canadians do rock and can produce content that excels and compete in the global competition contest for attention. And that living lab is YouTube. YouTube proves,
Right.
and in only 17 years versus 40 years for the other, for the legacy, 17 years, Canadians lead in every genre. They have many, many Canadian YouTube creators with millions, if not
Right.
billions of views. So we don't have a creativity problem in this.
We can do it. We can do it. Okay, so we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Our Canada, Our Future. We're talking about Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Act, with Irene Berkowitz from Audience Lab. Irene, we've talked a lot about the concerns about the scope of this bill and what it's failing to do or getting wrong about creating and supporting Canadian content. I wanted to talk about some of the people who are impacted by this. You'd alluded to this a little bit earlier on, but there are a lot of content creators out there who've been quite vocal in speaking out against this bill. Maybe you could talk a bit about a couple of stories and what their criticisms are of what this bill would do to them.
100%. I'd like to actually start, since I did mention the new media creators, I'd like to start with the critics in terms of even the fundamentals of the legacy creators, which they talk about the urgency to level the playing field. And many have suggested that the playing field is already level due to the policy regulation that I was talking about before, simultaneous substitution, which adds a 30% audience. And then the policy regime quite brilliantly required the legacy broadcasters to invest 30% of their revenues, making the net contribution of the legacy broadcasters zero. So if anything, the playing field, it could be argued that the playing field is actually weighted against the streamers because all they have is their content and whatever audience they collect and whatever people they can convince to subscribe. So that's a sort of glaring criticism by the new media creators. Now, the new media creators have come out in force against being included in this bill. People like the number one YouTube channel, the CEO of that channel, Morgan Fortier, which that channel is called Super Simple Songs. It gets 43 billion views around the world, and it depends entirely because there's a lot of good regulation against advertising for children on YouTube, and particularly in the US, and it depends on its YouTube revenues. And it's not so-called official Canadian content. When we did our study on YouTube, we learned that these creators, they're doing their content on the fly. They don't file paperwork. They don't employ people in the same way. We were very, very conservative with our assessment of part-time employment, only 1/5, because they're saying to their friend, will you help me out on Tuesday and then maybe next Friday? And we still calculated 30,000, around 28,000 jobs, which has been further corroborated in the last two Oxford economic reports on YouTube by YouTube reports by Oxford Economics. So we're all coming to the same numbers. There's slightly different methodologies. So all these revenues derive from rising in the audience rankings by the algorithm. And the YouTube is a living lab, again, because it gives back the creator all this data about how they're doing, where they're doing it. And there's some tremendously fascinating stories about YouTube creators like the icing artist who found that her cake decorating videos were doing very well in the Mideast, adjusted to subtitles, leaped her subscribers from 30,000 to 1 million, now has 3 million, quit her job as a cabinet maker. Her husband quit his job as a cabinet maker, and now they're supporting their entire family of, I think they have 2 children, on YouTube. TikTok creators similarly have done the same kind of thing. Darcy Michael, a TikTok creator, has testified in the Senate. So the creators are very concerned about applying content quotas for which there is no proof that they have ever built audiences. Just to end here, but legacy, with all the content sort of push type of discoverability rather than pull or demand, the audiences for Canadian content that uses the most public funds, which is premium, primetime, expensive drama, have really been stuck at under 10% for 4 decades. So we have this giant success story.
Interesting.
In new media.
You really laid out the sort of big difference between the then and now. Well, listen, this is a fascinating topic. I think it'd be interesting to watch this as it proceeds through the Senate. But I want to thank you very much, Irene, for joining us today to talk about this bill, and hopefully we'll have you back later to talk about it a bit more. I want to thank you, the audience, and we'll see you next time on Our Canada, Our Future.